The lure of New Orleans, its food, architecture, music, and welcoming atmosphere has made the hospitality industry a major economic driver for the region. But the COVID-19 pandemic has curtailed the industry's success. What will it take to bring visitors back to enjoy what this area offers? Coming up for discussion on living in the new normal. Well, New Orleans invites the world to visit, but the pandemic has kept guests away. Hello, I'm Marcia Cavanaugh, and thanks for joining us for our latest Living in the New Normal. The hospitality industry is a major part of the city's economy, but due to COVID-19, industry workers have been hit hard as hotel rooms have remained empty, restaurants have struggled, and musicians haven't been able to play live to their appreciative fans. The relaxing of restrictions put in place to combat the virus is helping, but is it enough for the industry to rebound? Here to discuss that question are Mark Romig, Senior Vice President and Chief Marketing Officer at New Orleans & Company, Jan Ramsey, Publisher and Editor-in-Chief at Offbeat Media, and Greg Reggio, Chef, Owner of Taste Buds and Zia Restaurants. Thanks a lot for joining us, guys. And this has, I know, been a challenging time for each of the respective industries that you guys are involved with. Mark, I'm going to start with you, but I'm just quickly a round table around the three of you guys. Let's talk about what the hospitality industry has meant to the city in terms of its economic impact. Start with tourism and hotels. Mark, with you.
Well, certainly we go from a year of 2019, which was a record-breaking year for the industry with over 18 million people visiting the city, spending over $10 billion in real dollars. That's both transportation costs as well as hotels, attractions, restaurants, retail, and employing about 89,000 people in a direct way. To here we are now in the coming to the end of 2020, where we have seen more than 35,000 people lose their jobs in the industry. Spending has come to almost a standstill in many ways, and we're slowly but gradually getting out of it. But it's going to take a while to return.
Okay, Mark, I know it's really been, crushing to you guys because you worked so hard and promoted the city so well. The same thing for the restaurant industry. Greg, let's go on over to you. I mean, we've seen restaurants really struggle, and we're going to be talking a little bit later on about the innovative ways they've tried to meet these challenges. But in terms of the restaurant industry as a whole, as it was before, I mean, what kind of impact did it have?
Well, it was huge. I mean, the hospitality and restaurant industry there, it's our number one industry down here. It's a major driver, a major employer, and not just directly in the restaurant. Think about all the other support industries that are part of it, the delivery drivers, the seafood suppliers, the distributors, all the different companies that support that. And even though the restaurants that are in the outlying areas that aren't, let's say, supported by tourism, it's those employees who work in the tourism-driven restaurants that come out and they would eat at our restaurants over in the suburbs and the like there. So, I mean, all major drivers of the economy throughout the region. So huge to what the success of what New Orleans is.
Really, and in terms of restaurants, like post-Katrina would read about how there were just a record number of restaurants around. So this has really been a hit.
It's great. You think about when I first opened up Semolina at the corner of Metairie Road and I-10, I had 5 competitors. Now there were 35 when we opened up Mazzato. So a real change in there. A lot of people got in the restaurant business. And sure, we've had an influx of major competitors that came in, national competitors, but then you also had a lot of chef-driven concepts that came in, smaller places, really unique things that went on. So you had a lot of people that got into the business. It was easier to get into the business than it ever was when I started in the industry. So you had a lot more restaurants that opened up in the post-Katrina era.
Okay, Jan, let's go over to you. I mean, music. Of course, New Orleans music loved worldwide, and people come here looking for that music, wanting to hear and enjoy that music. So, what, in your experience, and I must say that you've been in the magazine business, Offbeat magazine, about the music industry for over 30 years. So if anybody knows how the music industry has grown and what the impact was and continues to be, but what it was looking like before this pandemic, it's you. So what did you see it to be?
Well, I think all the statistics or the studies have shown that people come here number one for food and number two for music. And the biggest driver, I think, of interest in New Orleans as a music town has been the Jazz and Heritage Festival, because that has continued to grow and grow and grow, as has, I think, the second largest festival, the French Quarter Festival. But there's also, in addition to the festivals, there are also all the clubs around the city, live music clubs and bars, and some restaurants that use music as an attraction, who are now not in business. So not only are the clubs unable to open, which means the musicians have no place to play, and the festivals are all canceled. And again, going back to what Greg said earlier, there's a bunch of people that are also involved in that business that don't have jobs either. They don't have anything to do. I mean, you can't, especially a musician. I mean, do you want a musician to go out and, I guess they could go out and dig a ditch or something, but they can't. They can't do anything.
Because music
and they're
is
very
their lives.
frustrated.
Yeah.
Because music is their lives, and it's a part of the city.
Right. Mark, I'm going to bring it back over to you. Let's, Jan talks about the clubs and the festivals and then all of the restaurants that, Greg was talking about. I mean, everything was just brought to a screeching halt all of a sudden. Businesses closed, no place to, couldn't go to restaurants, can't go to clubs to hear music. People weren't coming to fill up those hotel rooms. What has this done? What has this pandemic done to us? And, in terms of tourists coming and filling up hotels?
Well, again, I like to think back to post-Katrina, where everyone around the world came to our rescue. Here, we're in the same boat as the rest of the world, so we're all having to come back to our own rescue. We've had to adapt. Obviously, when this came to a screeching halt, everything stopped except for essential businesses, and so we were at our homes, and the clubs weren't open, and the hotels were considered essential businesses, but they were limited in the visitation because nobody was able to travel. And restaurants, as we know, stopped like a hard stop. And so what we've done over the last several months, as these restrictions have been eased up a little bit, we've seen an adaptation, a brilliant adaptation by hotels and restaurants and bars, particularly, as we've tried to figure this out. How do we do it safely? The attention that we're putting on the safety message is huge, because we want to be a city that people feel like they can come and trust that they're going to have a safe experience. And so our attractions, our hotels, our restaurants, our bars are at the vanguard of putting together safety protocols, because that's something that the visitor is looking for. They're not going to go someplace where they feel like they're not going to be safe with their family.
So in terms of, let's talk conventions. We saw, conventions, there was no travel really here.
Right.
Are we starting to see it pick up maybe a little bit?
Small meetings are able to be produced now within the restrictions that are provided for hotel ballrooms and meeting rooms. 50%, but no more than 250 people. That's the limit. They can control access, egress, ingress, tracing, spatially distancing the seats in a classroom style or theater style seating. They can serve appropriately any kind of food and beverage. And so up to that restricted level of 250, they can have those meetings. Trade shows have to have a special permit going forward in 3.3. But for the most part, those large exhibitions and conventions are not happening. We're hoping we can see some movement in the first and second quarter of next year. But that's a huge component of our tourism economy. They spend, the visitor to a trade show or a convention spends almost twice as much as a leisure traveler. And so it's a very important component that we need to get back in. And it's very competitive. A lot of cities are in the same boat. All the cities that we compete with are there.
Hotels. Are hotels open? Are they accepting guests?
Yes, we have the majority of our hotels are open, but again, they're only staffed up to the number of rooms that they're filling, and so you don't have full employment at those hotels. But they have high standards of safety protocols in place. As you know, there's a mask mandate in New Orleans. You have to have a mask if you're going to come visit, and socially distant and do the necessary hygiene. But again, it's going to take some time. Some hotels are still in a very slow mode operational style.
Now, you did have some evacuees, some storm evacuees coming in.
That's correct. We hosted almost 13,000 evacuees at one point after Hurricane Laura.
So, Greg, let's get back over to food. Restaurants suddenly they were not open. They couldn't, have their employees working to serve your customers, and so you really had to come up with some innovative approaches. What has the restaurant industry done?
Well, initially it was okay. You can open, but you just have limited service. And then what you could do is, well, they could come into your restaurant just to order to go. And so we modified that. And then, well, you could stand outside, but you couldn't come in. Then after that was, now you had to stay in your car. Well, restaurateurs just as a whole, they're a pretty adaptive bunch. I mean, we all got into this business, and we know how to stick and move, as you say. We kind of figured that out. So you saw restaurateurs becoming very creative in their methods, and they adapted. I mean, we'll do just about anything in any way we can to make it through it. I mean, I think there is no better city than New Orleans that's better suited to deal with crisis. I mean, all the different things we've been throughout from the beginning, just the unlikeliness of New Orleans being a city in the first place. So that's what we did as an industry. We figured it out. My restaurants in particular, I mean, they almost look like an Avis rent-a-car return lane the way we had it set up. I mean, I was going to put the kids in the NASCAR suits out there and have the bzz, 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 it was just very efficient all the while. It's really a visual show of highest levels of sanitation and safety and all that. Those are things that our industry does anyhow. Those are the things that's the hallmark of professional restaurateurs, having high levels of sanitation, now really putting it on display. Those are things we did. The amount of money that the restaurateurs have been spending on the safety and sanitation, just on gloves and the Sadie wipes and all. Those are the type of things we did to give the level of confidence to our guests that, hey, we got this. This is something we can handle. We can give you the things you need to where you can feel safe.
And so also, from what I understand, in order to keep your restaurants open to a degree, or to keep your employees employed, while also helping people who needed food, there have been some food programs involving restaurants to distribute food to those in need.
There were. In New Orleans specifically, there was it was a pilot program that the city partnered up with FEMA, and it was called the Mass Feeding Program, pilot program. It was initially, it was just supposed to go on for a month, and it was very well funded by FEMA, and actually it's still going on to this day, and it's been nice. And they paid the restaurants a relatively small amount of money. Normally I would not have participated, but it was able to be recrafted in such a manner it made sense for the restaurants. They were able to cook food in bulk, chill the food down, so they're able to cook it in off hours, keep the staff busy, keep them employed, and then that food was delivered to the New Orleans Culinary and Hospitality Institute, kept those folks busy, kept them going, preventing that facility from shutting down. And then they partnered up with Chef's Brigade and Revolution Foods, who then packaged it individually, worked with Delivery NOLA, and got that food delivered to the people in need. So it worked. It involved a lot of different individuals, and the restaurants were able to make a fair profit off it, and most importantly, keep their people employed. For my restaurant, it made up 20% of the volume. That's significant. For some restaurants, it made up 80% of the volume. So you took something that normally you would not participate in because the dollar volume was insignificant when you look at it on a per meal basis, but it made a lot of sense. So all kind of different programs that were out there. Making sandwiches for $1.20. Hey, I was doing it. You do whatever you can to keep the doors up, to keep your people employed.
And some restaurants, unfortunately, it's just been too much for them.
Well, you think about it, there's a lot of restaurants that close down, and not just temporarily. I mean, you'll never see them back. I mean, PBS will have an opportunity to do a new version of the new lost restaurants in New Orleans. They're not coming back. It's tough. In the restaurant industry, you've got about a 5 to 10% bottom line profit. It's tough to recover from being out of business for 8 months. Really difficult to get back.
I know that this has been a real time of struggle, and certainly struggle for musicians, Dan, like you noted. There's the places where they make their money, the places where they play, the festivals, the clubs, etc. Can't do it. So what have they turned to? What have they been doing?
Well, a lot of musicians have been turning to social media, specifically I guess the most popular social media would be Facebook. Putting stuff on Facebook, or even starting Patreon pages where they could get people to donate to them. And that was very strong at first, I think, starting in March. And then as time has gone on, it's probably not has been as lucrative for the musicians as it was at first, because it's, maybe people were, burnt out or something like that. But what's also happened is that there are a few clubs that have also started doing live streaming through various and sundry platforms that they affiliate with. And I think, Tipitina's is probably the main one. It's probably the most famous club in New Orleans. They've done some TV type things, and what they've also done, first they were doing live streaming, and now they're doing a situation where they have a live stream, but they're ticketing it. So if you want to view it, it's like a pay-per-view. You pay to see it. But I don't know how long that can last either, because music is, it's a live thing. It's a visceral thing. There's a connection between the audience and the musicians that you just don't get from watching it on, your smartphone or your iPad, So, I mean, that's a big problem. I mean, there are several clubs who have done this. And in fact, I think it may persist after this is over with, because it may give them a source of revenue that they maybe had not thought of, So, but still, there are so many music clubs and musicians who just don't know. They don't know what to do. Particularly, I'll say, Tipitina's is sort of off the beaten track. It's not in the French Quarter, and then you have the places on Frenchman Street, and the Frenchman Street. Nobody's going to go to Frenchman Street unless there's music, and it's proven. I mean, my office has been on Frenchman Street for 25 years, and I've never seen it like this. I've never seen it so slow. And the bars can't open up. Even if the bars do open up at a quote-unquote 25% capacity, 50% capacity, the bartenders and the wait staff make money from tips. And if they're not getting tipped by, a full house, which is what they ordinarily would have, not a full house that turns over several times, then they're not going to go back to work either. I mean, it's a terrible situation for people in music. And when I hear, talk about hotels and restaurants, music is an integral part of the hospitality industry here. But one of the problems I think that music has is that there's no person, there's no like a restaurant association or, hotel motel association or a CVB that advocates for the nighttime economy, the music economy. And I think that's something that the city needs to consider very seriously, because we don't really have that here. I think there are many other cities in the country that have this, many other ones. I mean, Austin, Orlando, Pittsburgh, Cleveland, and these are not music cities. They're cities that have music, So we need to consider that, because they need to have a seat at the table.
I know it's just really been such a devastating impact. But I'll ask you this in a little bit. Let me get back over to Mark right now. And so, this is what's happening now, and we're trying to adjust to like the lifting of restrictions a little bit here and there. But what do you see in terms of general tourism and the hotel industry too? What does the future hold? How are you going to begin to make this just rise again?
Well, we're going to be playing to what we call our sweet spot, which is the regional drive market. The studies and the trends that we're seeing is that people are going to be willing to get into their car for the most part and drive within about a 250-mile radius of a destination. And that's primarily the majority of the people that visit New Orleans on a regular basis. Those are the folks that know us the best. And they travel here the most. And so I've already started that messaging. We're out there with a regional road trip, as we're calling it, campaign. We're in those markets inviting people to come visit safely here in the city of New Orleans. And so that will gradually grow as we are able to have more resources to put against that. Our revenue was drastically cut because the dollars that we use come off of occupancy at hotels. And so when there's no occupancy or little occupancy, we're getting less and less revenues that we can use to buy media in other markets to invite people to the city. As the destination marketing organization for the tourism industry, that's our job. That's our sole mission, is to represent all of the attractions and clubs and restaurants and hotels and things that you can do in the city of New Orleans and tell that story to the world. We need resources to do that, and without those resources, we'll just have to do this as we can afford to do it. But that's what we're doing now. We've got that program underway. We'll be pushing Holidays New Orleans style once again. And then we're going to go into production next week for a new commercial that will be used for all through 2021 and into 2022, inviting people to visit the city that they've missed so much. We get conversations from around the world on a regular basis through our social media channels, asking about our city, asking information when they can get here, what they can do. So there's a lot of brand love for the New Orleans industry, for the tourism economy, and we want to tap into that as much as we can, because that's how we're going to get back. We need that spending back into our community, not only for the salaries and the businesses, but our city services depend on this retail spending.
Right. And of course, I mean, we have so many people who work in the service industry and the hospitality industry. They've been unemployed. We need to get them back to work as well.
And it's not just the hotel and restaurant and attraction workers. It's the cultural economy, as we like to call it. It's our artists. It's our Black Mardi Gras Indians. It's the people who produce the music. All of that is affected right now.
That's a big part of it. Restaurants, Greg, what do you see in the future for restaurants? Do you think that some of these changes, like takeout, for instance, is this something that's going to stay?
It is. Well, I think what you're going to find is you're going to find a growing consumer confidence. So right now, we really feel there's a limited amount of people who are going out to dine, and we'll see that start to grow. But to go, to your point, will continue to be extremely strong. You are going to have a segment of the population that they just don't want to be around crowds. They're not going to go. I had a buddy of mine today tell me he went to a movie just over the weekend. I didn't even realize movie theaters were open. I don't have that confidence right now. Well, I'd sit in a movie theater, but he said nobody was in there. I was really shocked to even hear that it was open. But I think you'll start to find that percentage of people who are willing to go out, that's going to grow. But to go will remain strong. We are modifying our restaurants to have permanent improvements to be able to efficiently handle that. You won't see us with a drive-through, but definitely drive up, more like kind of bank drive up in areas to make it much more efficient. I think we'll see a big change in outdoor dining space. People are going to continue to want to do that, so we'll expand those areas where we can. I think you'll see smaller menus, not these vast menus out there, and all that has to do with labor costs, because as our overall volume has shrunken down, because with to-go and with some of these other things away from restaurant dining, you're going to find that your alcohol sales aren't nearly as strong, so that cuts your overall profit. My fixed costs have pretty much stayed the same. A lot of our landlords haven't gone and trimmed our occupancy expenses, so we've got to save money in other ways, and labor is a big portion of what we spend. It's up to about 35% of our overall cost, so we've got to do some things that we need to cut our labor costs. That number keeps growing and growing and growing.
Okay, so adaptation is going to have to continue in the restaurant industry.
No doubt.
Music, Jan, what do you see in the future? I mean, we need festivals back, certainly. We need the musicians to be able to go play at bars, but we also have to stay healthy.
Exactly, and there have been some, not proposals, but ideas on how to do that. I mean, I've talked to some of the music club owners about putting plexiglass between the bands and the audience, which is crazy and quite expensive. You can put in, if you have a special permit, you can have music that does not have a singer or wind instruments. So if it's a guitar or bass and a piano, maybe that would be fine. But I mean, how much can you do with that? And again, you still can't get the number of people into a bar to make it worthwhile and pay the musicians. I mean, that's a big thing, because typically, if you're not making any money in the bar, then, or the restaurant where you play, then the musicians aren't going to get paid. And some of the musicians are having to play for tips. So, it's a big problem. Yeah. I mean, we don't know what's going to happen. And, I guess I thought maybe if people sit down in a restaurant, or if they sit in a venue and have, tables set up, that's not a typical scenario in a New Orleans music venue. Everybody's dancing up,
Right.
standing up and dancing and drinking, whatever. But maybe if they sat down and you sold, like a supper club or something, where you sold a ticketed event, it could help. But it's going to be a paradigm shift from what we have now.
Right,
and I mean, it's going to employ a lot less musicians.
And certainly in New Orleans music, yes, wonderful keyboards and string instruments, but boy, the horns, a big part of New Orleans music, as well as singing.
Indeed.
Yeah, so it definitely is. I know it's a real big challenge. Okay, we just have a little bit of time left. I'm going to, each of you, just to sort of give final thoughts, or what message do you want to deliver to folks looking out there of how they can help our industry get through this? Mark, let's start with you.
Yeah, I say we stay optimistic for the first and foremost thing that we can all do. We can support our restaurants. We can support our musicians however they are able to get their craft out to us. We can visit the attractions and stay in the hotels, find some way to support our local economy. And remain optimistic. We will get through this. As Maya Angelou said, this storm will run out of rain at some point, and we'll get to the other side of it. We just need to stay focused and keep positive.
Yeah, and as Greg noted, New Orleans, we're certainly not used to, we certainly are used to adversity and getting beyond it. So, Greg, what are your final thoughts?
It says it right here on the mask. It says, eat local, it's important. Just remember, hey, if every day keeps getting worse and worse, today ain't so bad. So keep your chin up. We can handle this. We'll get through it.
And we're going to see more outdoor dining, you think, in the future? Huh?
No doubt.
We have the climate that really could accommodate it.
You know what? What's a little sweat? After a while, you run out of sweat. It's all good.
Jan, what's your final thoughts? What can we do to help musicians and clubs?
Well, since we all have access, or most of us have access to social media channels now, I'd say go to your favorite musician and go to their website and support them if they have a live stream, or go to Facebook and support them, or Patreon and support them, or go to one of the live streaming platforms like StageIt. StageIt is doing. They're doing DBA and the Preservation Hall, the Tipitinas, and the Rock and Roll, I think, has regular live streams too. So, that's a good way to, support the musicians.
Support in that way. So, thanks, guys, for talking to us about this. It is a challenge that we're all facing, but we will get beyond it. And, of course, if you want to find out about music, you can go to offbeat.com, right, Jan? And find out what is being offered out there.
Indeed.
All right, thanks a lot, guys. Well, our hospitality industry, as you can tell, is working on rebuilding to get to pre-pandemic levels. Another group that's been struggling is area nonprofit organizations. How are they meeting the COVID challenges? That's coming up on our next month in Living in the New Normal. Thanks for watching, and we will see you again soon. Have a good evening.